The Junkers Ju-52 is a transport aircraft that was designed and manufactured by German aviation company Junkers. Development of the Ju-52 commenced during 1930, headed by German aeronautical engineer Ernst Zindel. The aircraft's design incorporated a corrugated duralumin metal skin as a strengthening measure, which was very unusual at the time. The Ju-52's maiden flight was performed on October 13, 1930. It was initially designed with a single engine. However, it was produced in quantity as a trimotor. The primary early production model, the Ju-52/3M, was principally operated as a 17-seat airliner or utility transport aircraft by various civil operators during the 1930s. Following the rise of Nazi Germany, thousands of Ju-52s were procured as a staple military transport of the nation. The Ju-52 was in production between 1931 and 1952. In a civilian role, it flew with over 12 airlines, as both a passenger carrier and a freight hauler. In a military role, large numbers flew with the Luftwaffe, being deployed on virtually all fronts of the Second World War as a troop and cargo transport. It was also briefly used as a medium bomber. Additionally, the type was deployed by other nations' militaries in conflicts such as the Spanish Civil War, the Chaco War, and the Portuguese Colonial War. During the post-war era, the Ju-52 had a lengthy service life with numerous military and civilian operators. Large numbers were still in use by the 1980s. Even in the 21st century, several aircraft have remained operational, typically used for purposes such as heritage aviation displays and aerial sightseeing. The Ju-52/1M was able to land on wheels, skis, or floats. Prior to the Nazi government's seizure of control of the Junkers Company during 1935, the Ju-52/3M was produced principally as a 17-seat airliner. The Ju-52 first was used in military service in the Spanish Civil War against the Spanish Republic. It was one of the first aircraft to be delivered to the nationalist faction in July 1936. Their first use was to help airlift Franco's Army of Africa from Morocco to the Spanish mainland, bypassing a Spanish Republican naval blockade. Between July 20 and the end of August 1936, Ju-52s carried out 461 transport flights, ferrying 7,350 troops together with weapons and equipment, with 5,455 more troops carried in September and a further 157 troops carried by the time the airlift ended early in October. In the Spanish theater, the Ju-52 was operated both as a bomber and as a transport. In the former role, it participated in the bombing of Guernica, although it was considered obsolete as a bomber by late 1937, by which point it was in the process of being replaced by more capable bombers. The type's final sortie in the theater was performed on March 26, 1939. By the end of the conflict, Ju-52s had accumulated 13,000 operational hours and had performed 5,400 offensive missions and dropped over 6,000 bombs. Following the end of the Spanish Civil War, no further aircraft of the bomber variants were built, though the type was again used as a bomber during the bombing of Warsaw during the invasion of Poland in September 1939. The Luftwaffe instead relied on the Ju-52 for transport roles during the Second World War, including paratroop drops. The first major operation for the aircraft after the bombing of Warsaw was in Operation Weserübung, the attack on Denmark and Norway on April 9, 1940. 52 Ju-52s transported a company of Fallschirmjäger and a battalion of infantry to the northern part of Jutland, and captured the airfield at Aalborg, vital to support the operation in southern Norway. Several hundred Ju-52s were also used to transport troops to Norway in the first days of this campaign. During the Norwegian campaign, the Luftwaffe's Ju-52s performed a total of 3,018 sorties, 1,830 of which had been carrying troops while the remainder transported cargo and various supplies. The seaplane version, equipped with two large floats, served during the Norwegian campaign in 1940, and later in the Mediterranean theater. Some Ju-52s, both float planes and land planes, were also used as minesweepers. The Ju-52 transport aircraft participated in the attack on the Netherlands on May 10, 1940. It was during this campaign that the Ju-52 performed a crucial role in carrying out the first large-scale air attack with paratroops in history during the Battle for The Hague. During the opening days of the Netherlands campaign, Many German aircraft were shot down by Dutch AA fire. A total of 125 Ju-52s were lost and 47 damaged. During August 1940, Nazi Germany decided to base large numbers of Ju-52s at airfields in the Lyon, Lille, and Arras areas. Luftwaffe transport units were deliberately held at a state of readiness for Operation Sea Lion, the envisioned invasion of the British Isles. However, this operation was never attempted, in part due to the Luftwaffe being unable to secure aerial supremacy during the Battle of Britain. The next major use of the Ju-52 was in the Balkans campaign. The type has been credited with enabling the rapid deployment of German ground forces throughout the theater. However, the Ju-52 was perhaps most famously deployed during the Battle of Crete in late May, 1941. 493 Ju-52s aircraft were used to transport much of the 22,750 troops flown onto Crete for the Luftwaffe's largest airborne invasion of the war. While victorious, 170 aircraft were lost along with 4,500 personnel. The high loss rate brought about the end of German paratroop operations. During the North African campaign, the Ju-52 was the mainstay reinforcement in resupply transport for the Germans, starting with 20 to 50 flights a day to Tunisia from Sicily in November 1942, building to 150 landings a day in early April. As the Axis situation became more desperate, the Allied air forces developed a counter-air operation over a 2-month period and implemented Operation Flax on April 5, 1943, destroying 11 Ju-52s in the air near Cap Bon and many mortar and bombing attacks on its Sicilian airfields, leaving only 29 flyable. That began 2 catastrophic weeks in which more than 140 aircraft were lost in air interceptions, culminating on April 18 with the Palm Sunday massacre in which 24 Ju-52s were shot down, and another 35 staggered back to Sicily and crash-landed. Hitler used a Ju-52 for campaigning in the 1932 German election, preferring flying to train travel. After he became Chancellor of Germany in 1933, Hans Bauer became his personal pilot, and Hitler was provided with a personal Ju-52. As his power and importance grew, Hitler's personal air force grew to nearly 50 aircraft, which also flew other members of his cabinet and war staff. Most Ju-52s were destroyed after the war, but 585 were built after 1945. A Ju-52 appears in the opening sequence and finale of the 1968 Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood film Where Eagles Dare.